When Hollywood icon Diane Keaton passed away on October 11, 2025, at 79, the world paused in sorrow. Tributes poured in. The New York Times hailed her as a beacon of grace and independence. Vanity Fair called her the very spirit of a generation. Yet amid the flood of eulogies, one voice carried an unexpected weight: the hushed, haunting admission of her longtime co-star and on-again, off-again love, Al Pacino. For 4 decades, Pacino had guarded his feelings. And now at last he spoke. "In my eyes," he said, "she was the soul of K. Corleone." These words weren't typed in a press release or uttered between takes. They emerged in Pacino's new memoir, Sonny Boy, a reflective self-portrait bearing a rare confession: "She helped me through my ruins when I could barely stand." That line, more than any other, sent fans racing back through film history, reconnecting dots they'd only half noticed in the haze of Hollywood myth. But their story began long before one silent glance in an interview. It started in a cramped East Harlem eatery called Patsy's, during an audition for The Godfather. Francis Ford Coppola was waging a battle with Paramount, insisting on a fresh face for Michael Corleone. He found it in a relatively unknown stage actor named Al Pacino, an intense young man whose fiery eyes unsettled studio executives. For Kay Adams, Coppola chose Diane Keaton, fresh off Broadway, a woman who seemed too lighthearted to belong in the mafia underworld. Fate brought them together in that audition bar, two strangers cold to conversation, asked to play lovers. Diane later recalled how Pacino barely spoke, his gaze drifting through cigarette smoke. But in that silence, she saw an unexpected depth. Coppola's journal would note, "Her presence softens his fierce edges." Together they breathe authenticity. No one realized it in the moment, but those first shared breaths in a smoky room would steer both their careers, and their hearts, onto a path neither could have predicted. When The Godfather premiered in March 1972, something extraordinary happened. Audiences saw Michael Corleone's quiet brutality mirrored by Kay's gentle strength. Behind the camera, Diane bloomed into the bridge between Pacino's brooding intensity and a crew desperate for a lighter mood. One set hand remembered, "She made Al laugh for the first time in weeks." On screen, their chemistry was electric. Off-screen, it crackled quietly, unspoken. After the film's triumph, Pacino invited her to dinner near Central Park. For the first time, they talked, not as characters, but as two people astonished by newfound fame. Diane would later say, "He wasn't performing. He was simply himself." Their bond, forged in whispered lines and half-smiles, deepened away from the bright lights. By the time The Godfather Part 2 wrapped, their friendship had blossomed into romance. They attended premieres arm in arm, yet held their private world shut tight against the tabloids. Diane once teased in an interview, "He's the love of my life, but we're complicated." That complication became their signature: lovers in public, partners in art, yet always just out of reach of true intimacy. Their careers soared. In 1977, Diane won an Oscar for Annie Hall, her effervescent wit and modern spirit capturing hearts everywhere. Meanwhile, Pacino's raw portrayal in Dog Day Afternoon and later his ruthless turn in Scarface turned him into Hollywood's emblem of defiance. Yet as Diane reveled in interviews and cornered every red carpet, Al retreated into a cocoon of solitude. Fame's glare split them apart. During that rise, Diane tried to pull him back, from drinking bouts in smoky clubs to financial ruin after the box office flop revolution. She urged him to take Sea of Love, a small thriller that resurrected his career. He later confessed in Sonny Boy, "She saved me when I had nothing." Yet the very differences that fueled their art began to erode their bond. Her openness clashed with his guarded heart, her lightness with his brooding. Then came the blow that changed everything. In the late 80s, Pacino fathered a child with another woman. The news reached Diane like a cold wave. She realized then that a promise had never been made, that the ring she longed for would never materialize. In her memoir she wrote plainly, "I told him, if you won't marry me, I'm leaving. And I did." Their personal world collapsed even as Francis Ford Coppola called them back one last time for The Godfather Part 3. Reuniting in Rome, they slipped into Michael and Kay's final farewell on screen. No rehearsal could capture the real ache in their eyes, no words were needed. Coppola watched in silent awe, two artists who still felt an echo of love, removed by decades, facing the irrevocable end of both character and relationship. When the cameras stopped rolling in 1990, they parted ways for good. After that, Diane built a new life of her own design. She adopted Dexter in 1996 and Duke in 2001, turning motherhood into her greatest role. She gravitated toward characters who mirrored her resilience, an aging musician in Something's Got to Give, a supportive mother in Book Club. Each performance felt like a letter to herself, a celebration of honesty over perfection. Pacino, meanwhile, reached for every ridge of his craft. Scent of a Woman finally earned him the Oscar he'd long deserved. He introduced twins Anton and Olivia with Beverly D'Angelo, and son Roman with Nora Alfaro, children he never married. Marriage is a state I never entered, he mused, but I have known love. In Sonny Boy, published in 2024, he let readers peek behind his private walls. His chapter on Diane stretches pages, suffused with gratitude and regret. She was the light I needed when my world collapsed. Few had known of the depths to which she'd rescued him. Their story, two parallel souls drawn together by art, torn apart by fame and fear, unfolded like a screenplay of its own. At her funeral, no public ceremony was held by pact with the family. Instead, social media filled with black and white images from Annie Hall and The Godfather, echoing her final wish for privacy and authenticity. But afterward, an unsettling hush remained. What if two people who defined modern cinema's golden age never truly resolved the love they shared? What unspoken words lingered between them for the remaining years? About 350 words in, here's a question I can't shake. If you could go back and tell young Diane and Al one thing about their future, what would you say? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. In the end, Diane's legacy stands untouched, a fearless artist who refused to be perfect, only honest. Pacino's tribute, born from the pages of a memoir, is his final love letter. It lingers now, a whisper between two legends, reminding us that behind every enduring film lies a story of ambition, sacrifice, and hearts that break in silence. As fans, we remember Diane Keaton for her luminous presence, her fearless aging, her fierce independence. We remember Al Pacino for his fiery intensity and the rare vulnerability he unleashed when speaking of her. And through every frame of The Godfather, Annie Hall and beyond, we sense the echo of a bond that defined them both. In Hollywood, some stories end in tears, others in applause. But the true measure of their love is the silence they maintained for decades, and the honesty with which Al finally spoke. That confession, as raw and unguarded as any on-screen scene, was the closing act of two souls who once danced around each other in shadows and light. And so, we bid Diane Keaton farewell. Yet, thanks to Al Pacino's heartfelt words, her presence will forever haunt the reels of our memory, and the pages of his heart.